Hello, ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between. So for today, I've actually been wanting to do this. As you guys could tell by the title already, I'm going to be fan casting the Justice League that we're going to inevitably see in the DCU once it kicks off. I'm a huge fan of fan casting. I always pay attention to fan castings in forums and comments because they're always interesting. Sometimes they're actually casted, and sometimes it just never happens. But it's just a nice idea to think of, right? So I figured I'd throw in my own thoughts and picks as well, because who knows, it might happen. Just throwing it out there in the air, basically. So what I'll do is that I'll be fan casting like the original Justice League members that was seen in the Justice League animated show, because that's a Justice League I was actually first exposed to, and then I would think that that's a Justice League that's actually most popular with, the casual audience, right? That was like their first major introduction to the Justice League. And from there, I'll go with each character and then explain, my thoughts, some of the requirements needed for the role, and I'll go over some picks. Some picks I'll have just like two, some I'll have three, some maybe one. So, a wide variety, basically. So starting off, we have our Superman. So obviously, we don't really have to go through with Superman because we already know that Superman is casted, is going to be played by David Cornsweet. Which is great, great casting. Though I have not seen any of his shows. Actually, I just watched the first episode of Hollywood recently, but not enough for me to get an idea of his acting range. My hair here is really weird. But looks-wise, he looks like Superman straight from the comics. He is a gorgeous-looking man, and he has the height. He's 6'4", a tall dude. He would be the tallest Superman, basically. And he's young. He's 30 years old. So he could definitely be playing Superman for many years to come. So it's important to know these details because that's how I'll be casting some of the. I'll be referencing David Cornsweet's height and age, and use that as basis for some of my casting. Which I'll get to shortly. So let's start off with Batman. So what do we know about the Batman character or movie in the DCU? What we know so far is that there will be a Batman movie separate from Robert Pattinson's The Batman trilogy, called The Brave and the Bold. So The Brave and the Bold will be a Batman movie that will feature not just Batman, but Batman's son, Damian Wayne, who's also one of the many Robins already. I think he'd be like the fourth or fifth mainline Robin. With Damian Wayne being part of this movie, that also gives confirmation, and James Gunn has said it himself, that you will be seeing the extended Bat family. So what this means is that you will most likely be seeing the first Robin, the most famous one, who is Dick Grayson, who eventually becomes Nightwing. And you might see Batgirl, you might see Red Hood, and other characters. But definitely, you'll most likely be seeing Nightwing. But back on point, so what we know about Batman is that it will feature his son. So you can imagine that this Batman would have to be a little bit older than David Cornsweet's Superman, right? So somewhere between late 30s, mid to late 30s, and then if you want to push it, very early 40s, right? But I would ideally want to stray away from 40s because you're kind of getting older there. Like when your movie comes out, you might be like close to 50 already. So I don't know how that might be in terms of like being able to use the actor in more Batman stories. But hey, I'm also down to telling stories of like an older, more experienced Batman, right? So knowing that this Batman will be a little bit older than David Cornsweet, that's kind of where I started with my casting. So I'll start off with just my three picks, and then I'll narrow it down to who I really want as who would be my number one pick of the three. So first off, we have Jake Gyllenhaal. So I think Jake Gyllenhaal is a great candidate for the role of Batman for two, three reasons. One is that he could really, really, you know, um, commit to the physicality that the Batman role needs. Movies such as Southpaw, you can see he's really jacked in it. And if you've seen like it was on TikTok the time it came out, the shooting of that upcoming movie of his, Roadhouse, where he plays like a UFC fighter, I think, and he looks insanely jacked there, more jacked than he was in Southpaw. So in terms of the physicality aspect, he can deliver. He's gonna look good in a suit for sure. No padded needed. And not just that, Batman isn't just about the physicality. Batman is also about this very dark, creepy, mysterious, very weary role, right? And that's something that Jake Gyllenhaal can also definitely deliver. And that's actually why I like Jake Gyllenhaal as an actor. It's his roles such as Nightcrawler and Prisoners, where he just plays this like weird character, like he's creepy, and that's what Batman is. He's a creepy person, He's not supposed to be lighthearted or anything, right? He's supposed to be like this creepy guy who's going through so much trauma, and he has a lot to unload, And Jake Gyllenhaal can really give that. And even when you just look at Jake Gyllenhaal's eyes, especially like in Nightcrawler, his eyes just like so much like weirdness in it, and I think that really would lend itself perfectly for the Batman role. And on top of that, he was also very close to playing Batman in the Nolan trilogy, right? Which obviously went on to Christian Bale, who nailed the performance, obviously. But you could already see that Warner Brothers was already interested in Jake Gyllenhaal playing as Batman, so more reason for that one. The only downside here, somewhat, is that he's 5'11" compared to David Cornsweet's 6'4". So, for me, ideally, Batman and Superman should be the same height. I've always seen, and it's pretty evident, that Batman and Superman, they're pretty much, two sides of the opposite coin, right? And to add to that even, that's why I also, just side note, that's why I also think that Robert Pattinson would have been the perfect Batman to David Cornsweet's Superman, because they kind of have similar features with intense jaw structure, but totally opposite in terms of that. David Cornsweet looks like this very cheerful guy, and Robert Pattinson looks like this creepy dude. And I don't really get that two sides of the opposite, same coin, opposite sides vibe with if you're to have Jake Gyllenhaal and David Cornsweet. They don't look exactly the same. They don't share exactly the same features. Their height's a little bit off. Minor issues though. But in terms of performance, Jake Gyllenhaal would kill it. The second choice for me would be Jensen Ackles. This one is a casting that I really love because I have been a huge fan of Jensen Ackles since Supernatural and all of his other movies. He had that horror movie like Valentine something. I've always enjoyed his performance. In Supernatural, you could see his range. He could do comedy, he could do action, he could do drama, he could cry his heart out. And he could do this very serious role. And he has gravitas in his voice whenever he fights demons in Supernatural. So he could give that voice acting element that Batman would need to really sound imposing. But more than that, you could see that he could really get jacked. If you guys have seen his performance as Soldier Boy in The Boys. Really huge there. So another plus for, playing the role as Batman. The good thing here is that he's somewhat taller than Jensen Ackles. He's 6'1", so close enough to David Cornsweet's 6'4". And lastly, we have Richard Madden. So Richard Madden is mainly known as playing one of the Stark sons in Game of Thrones. And aside from that, I have only seen him in one show, which is he played some guard, some private guard, the guard or something like that. I was watching on Netflix. I forgot to finish that show. It was a pretty good show. So the only reason why I'm casting him, he's one of my choices because he looks the role. I think he really does kind of have that Robert Pattinson vibe, where very mysterious. Very he could give off this like mysterious, dark vibe, and he also looks wise. Looks wise alone, he could really look, like the opposite side of David Cornsweet's Superman. I could see that that counterbalance basically. Uh, the only thing there is that he's not really the best actor. I don't really. He wasn't really a standout for me in Game of Thrones, nor was he a standout in that show that I mentioned earlier. So that part I'm not sure. But again, I haven't seen all of his other movies. Oh, right, he was in Eternals. He was fine there. Not great. He was okay. So not the worst actor, but like, hey, maybe he's a good actor. He just needs like a good role. He needs to be given a good role. So who knows? So yeah, with those three, the one that I would really choose would be Jake Gyllenhaal, with a close second for Jensen Ackles. I think Jake Gyllenhaal really covers all aspects that's needed for Batman. The physicality aspect, that gravitas, dark, creepy, weird manner, vibe. He could really give that. And more than that, he has this star power. With Batman, I've always seen Batman as a role that's played by like prestigious actors or actors of a certain caliber. While Jensen Ackles is a close second, he's just not, he hasn't really cracked it into like, A-lister, right? But he is such an underrated actor. Don't get me wrong, such an underrated actor. But yeah, for those reasons, I'm going with Jake Gyllenhaal. So next up, we have Wonder Woman. So what do we know about the Wonder Woman, the character or the movie in the DCU? Well, we know that there is a prequel show called Paradise Lost, which takes place many, many, many years before the current time that the DCU will be set in. So I don't think we'll be seeing Wonder Woman there. Aside from that, we don't really know much about Wonder Woman. So my basis here is that Wonder Woman needs to be able to, stand toe to toe with the DC Trinity. So the DC Trinity are your big three heroes of DC. So that's Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman herself. So my casting there is around that, So my only basis here is same age, relatively close in height. The height though isn't really much of an issue, nor the age, because movie magic basically. You could really make someone look taller, shorter, someone look older, younger, with Hollywood magic. So with this one was tricky because for the longest time I was really such a huge fan of Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, but eventually I was able to like move past that, and yes, it is time we see a new Wonder Woman. Gal Gadot really put Wonder Woman in the map. Now I feel like it's time to pass it on to someone else. So with this, I have two actresses in mind. One of which I don't know, I haven't seen any of her movies, and the other I have seen one or two movies of hers. So let's start with the one I'm more familiar with. So this one is someone that James Gunn himself has actually worked with in the Suicide Squad and in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And this is, and I might be saying her last name wrong, Daniela Melchior. So she's mostly known, and if you watch the Suicide Squad, she was the one who played the Ratcatcher. She was really great in that role. For a character that I was really creeped out with the whole rats thing, she really sold that role really well. And I could see that she definitely has, the acting chops, basically. So that's always a plus. I don't want to just cast as much as possible. I'm trying to cast, with knowing that the person can act, can perform the role, right? So yeah, so Daniela Melchior is one, and she's 5'6", so she's on the shorter side. I don't know how I feel about her being 5'6", and then you have David Cornsweet at 6'4", and then Jake Gyllenhaal's 5'11". Ideally, I'd want the DC Trinity to all be relatively like close to age. I don't want, as long as it's not visually like really like obvious to look at, like you could just see the difference, then we're fine, right? And again, movie magic. She could have like high boots or whatever when she's in Wonder Woman, wouldn't be a problem. But next up, we have Adria Arjona. So Adria Arjona, I have not seen her in any of her movies. But the thing is that I started to know more about her when I was going over fan castings, and when I saw her, I was like, oh man, looks wise alone, looks wise, physique wise, she would look perfect as Wonder Woman. If you guys have seen of her movies, she was in Six Underground with Ryan Reynolds. She was in Morbius with Jared Leto. Oh, that was the Doctor. Yeah, okay. Performance was okay there. She was in Andor. I heard she was okay in Andor, but I haven't seen Andor yet. I'm planning to finish Andor once I finish Ahsoka, whatever. And she was also in Triple Frontier with Ben Affleck and Oscar Isaac and all that. The thing here also is that Adria Arjona already also worked with James Gunn in the Belko Experiment, which I have seen, but I kind of don't remember the movie. I remember it being pretty fun to watch. But anyways, looks-wise, Adria Arjona and Danielle Melchior look perfect to play Wonder Woman. So my basis here, it's kind of hard to go based on acting because I have not really seen any of their movies well enough to really give an accurate measure in terms of their acting capabilities. So I will be going based on looks alone. So looks alone, I will definitely give it to Adria Arjona. She really has this, Greek vibe. I mean, I know she's not Greek. If I'm not mistaken, she's Cuban. But she doesn't. She has that, very Amazonian vibe, basically, and that's perfect for Wonder Woman, obviously. Can I just say there has been so many fan casting for Wonder Woman, like Ana de Armas, who's the girl in Baywatch? I'm forgetting her name. Oh, Alexandra Daddario, and it's like I don't get it. Like, just casting anyone that was hot. So for me, I wanted someone had like that Amazonian, vibe, looks wise and just complexion and all that. So I really think Adria Arjona would be perfect as Wonder Woman. She's a very pretty actress. She's very hot. So that gets my thumbs up as well. So next up, we have Green Lantern. So for Green Lantern, this was an interesting cast because I wanted to cast a Green Lantern that would... One of my checklists for casting Hal Jordan is that the Hal Jordan needs to be able to have this either visual chemistry or acting chemistry with another Green Lantern, John Stewart, and the Flash, because they're best friends also. So it's kind of like Superman, Batman, but this one's Green Lantern and Flash, and Green Lantern. So I have 3 actors here. I have Glenn Powell, who most people will know from Top Gun. Taron Egerton, he was in Kingsman, and then he was in the Apple TV show Blackbird. And lastly, we have Jeremy Allen White, known in The Bear. So for me, what makes Glenn Powell a really good candidate is that he's a young actor. And it's typecasting, but like, man, I look short. I need to just keep standing. So he's a young actor, and he's played the pilot already in Top Gun, so that's a plus, right? Like, you could tell he'll look good in a pilot suit, and he does look good in a pilot suit. And his role there is pretty similar to Hal Jordan. Oozes with charisma. He's cocky. He's confident. That was his role in Top Gun, basically. So like, such a no-brainer choice. But Taron Egerton also is such a great option because I feel like he's an actor that still he's just meant to play one he deserves a superhero role. He's just so charismatic, so fun to watch on screen. He's incredibly good looking, and he's very young. Same thing with Glenn Powell, basically. The dude can get jacked. The dude's so jacked in that Blackbird show. Wild. But yeah, I know he's been fan casted a lot as Wolverine, but I don't really see it. But yeah, he would be a great option for Hal Jordan as well. You could also see that he really does action well in Kingsman. Obviously a good addition for the Green Lantern role. And lastly, Jeremy Allen White. The reason why I included this is because I'm currently watching The Bear, so he's top of mind for me. And Jeremy Allen White really gives off that cocky vibe, right? Like loudmouth, cocky, overly charismatic. Well, not charismatic, but overly confident and cocky, right? So I think that's primarily the reason why I included him in the list for my Hal Jordan. So with the three, for me, it's an easy Glenn Powell. He really just looks like Hal Jordan, and I like the fact that he's still new in Hollywood. So I would love to have him embody the role of Hal Jordan while he's still, still new in the scene, still trying to grow his still trying to, just find what he can be known for, basically. And yeah, Glenn Powell's my pick. My only worry here is that he might be really typecasted as like a pilot, because he's already played a pilot in 2 movies, if you guys are not aware. So the first one was Top Gun, and then the second one is Devotion, where he played another pilot role alongside what's his name? Kang, Jonathan Majors. So to play another pilot a third time will be funny. And considering how I completely forgot to mention. So what we know about Green Lantern is that there will be a Lantern show, and it's dubbed as it's a show that will be like a true detective, where you have your 2 Green Lanterns, Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart, traveling around the universe trying to unsolve this mystery on Earth, right? So that's what we know so far about Green Lantern in the DCU. So back to what I was saying, it's just gonna be funny to see it's just gonna be funny to see Glenn Powell, if he were to be Green Lantern in the Lantern show, star with another black actor, as and he's a pilot, and then so his partner's black, and then in Devotion is the exact same thing. Glenn Powell is a pilot, and then his partner's a black pilot. It's just so much similarities. I could see why he would say no to it, but at the same time, he does those roles well. So why wouldn't you cast him as Hal Jordan, right? So next up, I have my casting for Flash. To be honest, I only have one answer here, and it's Grant Gustin. Grant Gustin played the Flash for 9 years on CW, and he proved that he understands the role. He can bring the comedy, the drama required for the role, that comedy quip, that can't stop talking, just loves to throw a joke. He sells it really well. He has the frame as Flash, someone that's slim, looks like a runner, and he's at the right age, What is his age, Grant Gustin? So Grant Gustin is 33 years old, so he would be relatively in the same age as David Cornsweet, and definitely, again, basing it all off David Cornsweet. He would be close to, David Cornsweet's age. And I could already see Grant Gustin bringing that youthful vibe that the Justice League would need, that the Flash really gives, the role of the Flash, basically, that youthful comedy vibe. Grant Gustin just does it perfectly. And what I love about this idea is that it's really not impossible to cast him as the Flash. Some people, would say oh, it's so confusing. People are gonna be like, oh, is this the same Flash from the CW or whatever? I get that kind of, but in reality, these are 2 different properties. People will easily quick Google and then they'll get it, right? Oh, it's just a different Flash. But even if that was a problem, you could easily explain this with the multiverse, which everyone always goes to. It's we've already seen the multiverse in The Flash. So people who have watched The Flash know of the multiverse. We've seen the multiverse in the Flash movie with Ezra Miller. We're aware of the multiverse having same character played by looking different, played with different actors. That's already been established, right? Both in the show and the Flash movie. So that's an easy answer to all of this. So I feel like he's my go-to. But if not him, if it really can't be him, which it really has to be him, my God, man, give this guy the live action move. The role he deserves. He deserves to embody the Flash in the big screen. But if it can't be him, I have two options here. One is Jack Quaid. So Jack Quaid is mainly known for playing Huey in The Boys. Again, a very similar vibe to like Barry Allen. Very, he's very, very, very humorous. He's very humorous. People love him. He's the funny one. He's the youthful one. And again, same slim frame, which I think is very important for the Flash. You don't want the Flash that's really jacked, right? So I think he would be a great choice as well. But if not Jack Quaid, I actually have one more also, which would be such a left field choice. So for context, and you'll kind of get an idea of the type of actor I'm casting. But for context, generally, I'm not a fan of race bending character, especially if you're race bending just for the sake of race bending. But if you're gonna race bend a character, but the actor performing the role can really like embody the key traits, really embody who that character is supposed to be, then I have no problem with it. That's why sometimes I with the fan casting of like Giancarlo Esposito as like Professor X or Magneto, I could totally get it. It definitely makes sense. But then you have some casting, some race bended roles that just don't make sense. So with that in mind, I really for some reason, I just kept going back to this actor. Like, damn, he just embodies this character. He just embodies Barry Allen perfectly for me. And that is Steven Yeun. So Steven Yeun is mainly known for his role as Glenn in The Walking Dead, and he was in Netflix's Beef, which came out this year. And I don't even know exactly why I keep thinking back to Glenn. Like when I was coming up with this list, for some reason Steven Yeun just kept coming back to my mind. And like when I look back into it, I think it was just from the many years I watched him in Walking Dead. Where he really was this loud. He's not loudmouth, but like he was a very chatty person, and then he was the one that everyone loved to be with. Very friendly, very warm, and he was also like very, very badass at the same time. And I could just see him really give that performance perfectly for Barry Allen. But that is my issue. It's like the whole race bending thing. But I wouldn't be mad if it happens. I wouldn't be mad at all. Lastly, we have Martian Manhunter. Okay, so with Martian Manhunter, I actually don't know much about Martian Manhunter. My only real exposure to Martian Manhunter would be from the animated show, from the animated show. So what I know about Martian Manhunter is that he needs to have this very commanding voice, like he knows what he's saying, and he's a man with like, that's my worst impression of Martian Manhunter. He's a man that you could tell he's been through a lot. He speaks wisdom, and he's very like commanding when he talks, and just there's so much weight and gravitas to his voice, right? It's just like he's coming. When he talks, he demands your attention because he's coming from a place. When he talks, you just know immediately, like, oh man, this guy knows his shit. So with that alone, I have 3 picks. The first one, who has already confirmed himself that he has been in talks with James Gunn about playing a role in DCU, who is Giancarlo Esposito. So great choice. His voice is very unique. It stands out. And I think for all the choices I've picked for Martian Manhunter, it's always having this very unique voice, because again, I think it's such an important trait for Martian Manhunter. So Giancarlo definitely has that unique voice, and perfect role for him to play because sure, Giancarlo's a little bit older now, but since Martian Manhunter can shift to like an alien, wouldn't be a problem for him, right? Next up, we have Coleman Domingo. So Coleman Domingo came to mind immediately after Giancarlo Esposito. So if you guys remember him, Coleman Domingo, he played Candyman in Candyman, and he was in Fear the Walking Dead, which is where I first was exposed to him. And immediately, even in Fear the Walking Dead, the first time you see him, his voice stands out. It's just like a soothing voice and a voice of like a leader. It's like a voice of someone you could trust and you have faith in. So again, lends itself to that, right? His voice lends itself to the performance of Martian Manhunter. So lastly, I have Christopher Judge. So Christopher Judge, he's not really known as like an on-screen actor. I do know him for being the mocap actor and voice actor of as Kratos in the God of War series in the PlayStation 4 and 5. Again, his voice is really unique. If you guys haven't already, search for Kratos PlayStation 4 or 5 and then just listen to his voice. It is the most like commander voice you'll ever hear. And again, perfect for Martian Manhunter. Who would I pick? Honestly, it's a toss-up between Giancarlo Esposito or Christopher Judge. I think either of them would be such a great pick for Martian Manhunter. So yeah, that about and we missed one last. Hawkgirl. Hawkgirl already though has been casted with Isabella Merced. So makes things easier for me. So yeah, that about wraps up my fan casting. So to recap it, we have Superman played by David Cornsweet, Batman played by Jake Gyllenhaal, Wonder Woman played by Adria or Jonah, Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, played by Glenn Powell, Flash played by Grant Gustin, and Christopher Judge, Martian Manhunter played by Christopher Judge. So actually, you know what? Now I'm hesitating. Christopher Judge or Giancarlo Esposito? Ooh, I really can't. Damn, that's a hard one. Fine, I'm going with Giancarlo Esposito. So that would be my choice for Martian Manhunter. So yeah, that's my lineup for the DCU Justice League. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on my fan casting? Are there some castings you guys agree with? If not, like, which ones would you replace? I'm curious to know about them below, so comment them down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.